Hi, welcome back. This is Stacey Michelon with You Served, You Deserve. And I tell you what, if you really enjoy the podcast and the videos that are coming, I'd like you to hit subscribe and also hit like. Share with your friends, with your family, with other veterans. Today, we have a very special Unplugged episode. Again, with my partner here, Chris.
Hello.
Who's also a friend and a business partner. And Chris, and we have our other friend here, Seth.
Hi.
You've seen Seth in previous videos. We're going to actually be going in a little more detail on what he's talked about in his past videos. Seth and Chris actually have a longer relationship together. So without further ado, I want to welcome Seth to the show. Seth, how is it?
That's easy.
So what I'd like to do, Chris, I want you to talk about how you and Seth actually got together and started working together. You can leave out certain things if you want to.
And there's certain things that we don't want to talk about. But Seth and I actually met at a barbecue that we had at my house several years ago. And we just started talking about stuff. Seth was actually active duty at the time still.
Yeah, so one of our mutual friends, I think it was Rob, I'm not sure.
Yeah.
Someone invited me, I think it was Chris's birthday party, or they're just having a party at his house. I'd never met him before. So we showed up with the whole 12-man ODA and ate all of his food.
They give absolutely every single bit of barbecue.
I brought big old Marshall with me, and he just stayed at the buffet the whole night.
So yeah, Marshall's a good guy. I like him. So Seth, talk a little bit. You've had some interesting experiences in the service, but I mean, so you've had several jobs, right?
Yeah, so guys that watched the last episode me and Stacey did, I already heard this, but yeah, I was did 20 years in the Army, about 18 years of that, I guess, give or take, Special Forces, 16 years, something like that. Lost track. Static line, jump master, and then free fall, Halo. So quite a few jumps over the course of the years.
How many jumps would you say out total? Roughly.
Static line, probably a couple hundred. Free fall, probably close to 100 or so.
Okay.
So did you ever hit your head?
Oh, all the time. Yeah, actually, during free fall school, they make a video, of all the jumps and how bad you are when you first start compared to where you end up. And I made the end cut with the credits. So a guy set the approach low for himself, and he's the only one that made the drop zone. So I came in, hit the pavement next to the drop zone there in Yuma, basically hit my feet, bounced, and then landed on my head and slid on my helmet for, I don't know, 10, 15 meters probably.
Sure, that was a great outtake.
Yeah, I still have the video. It's pretty awesome. I was a little dazed and confused for sure after that one. The 18 Delta at the time on the cadre at the schoolhouse actually was the first one to get to me because he watched me come in and he was like, "Bro, are you good?" I was like, "Yeah, of course, I'm great. Let's do the last jump so I can graduate." Yeah.
Absolutely. So, it's an unspoken rule, no matter what, you just continue on. You just keep going. I mean, even if you're dazed and confused and a little bit disoriented, you just kind of gather your wits and keep moving, right?
Yeah. So, it's something that Stacey and I have talked about a lot, offline. And then I think the last podcast, we kind of touched on this as well. A lot of vets, I talk to vets daily. It's the same as the rest of us. And guys are like, yeah, but, back in the day, we didn't do medical. We didn't do sick call, especially during the war. You picked it up, you drove on, and you completed the mission, right? And so they think they can't get benefits. They think they can't get care or, any kind of ratings because there's no med records. And that's not necessarily true, right? It just makes it a little more difficult sometimes.
In your last year, you actually were having some issues with the TBI. So you sustained a TBI while you were jumping, right?
Yeah, I think I had a total of 13 or 14 TBI incidents throughout my career, if not more. And I got referred over to the Polytrauma Center that the VA runs out of Palo Alto.
So what is that?
So the Polytrauma Center, it's one of, I think, 3 or 4 now that are going on. They have both the ones through the VA, the Polytrauma, and then they also have private medical centers doing it specifically for SOF. So Ranger SEALs, Green Berets, guys like that. And what it is focused on TBIs, right?
No, wait. For those veterans who don't know, because I ran across veterans who said, what is TBI stand for?
So TBI is traumatic brain injury, right? And there's two major types, and I learned all of this at the Polytrauma Center actually. So there's a focal TBI, which is caused by direct impact, usually like car accident, IEDs, things like that, where the skull was actually pushed into the brain at some point, right? Usually identified by like a dent, something like that. And those are your most severe types of TBIs. That usually comes with the speech impediments, motor movement control, things like that.
Stuttering.
Yeah, stuttering. And I met a lot of those guys. So even though the Polytrauma Center focuses around soft, for conventional military that experienced a focal TBI, they actually take those guys in as well, and they live on campus while they go through care until they're either medically retired or recover and go back to service. And then the other is what they call the polytrauma, right? So the polytrauma TBIs are not necessarily a severe single incident, but a cumulative effect of multiple knockouts, multiple blows to the head throughout, years and years. Like kind of like quarterbacks in the NFL or professional boxers, right? Very similar. So it's effects that build up over time, well, a little bit here, a little bit there. And the next thing you know, you have a memory loss.
Okay, good. Memory loss is one. What would be other signs? If a veteran is sitting right now going, how do I know if I have this? Because like you said, the direct would be something impact, but then you have veterans who have served and might have over a course of their career. What would be some signs of a veteran sitting going, what are some of these signs I might have this?
So that's where it starts getting really interesting with the polytrauma stuff, right? Okay. A lot of the symptoms overlap with PTSD when you talk about VA ratings and diagnosis.
Okay.
So chronic headaches, migraines, memory loss, maybe motor control, aggression or mood temperamental swings, things like that. That's really common as well. Insomnia, sleep issues. The thing about it is you're talking about neurology, you're talking about brain injury, right? And so how it affects every person is really hard for medical science to nail down still, right? Because depending on which area of the brain was affected, it's going to be different. Yeah. In your own personality, right?
See, you brought up something that's interesting. And I want veterans right now to listen to this for a second. You brought up chronic headache and migraine. Now, we always talk about migraines with veterans all the time. Chronic headache and migraines are two different things. What would be, now we know what chronic headache is. Chronic headache is just, I get a headache every day or every other day I have a headache. What is a prostrating migraine?
Yeah, so a prostrating migraine is, first of all, let's define a migraine. Migraine, people usually feel it kind of creeps up on them, and they have them often. Okay, prostrating is a migraine that really is so bad that it's so intense that light, okay, you can't send any bright light. You have to lay down, close your eyes. You don't want any sound around you. Essentially, you want to completely deprive yourself of any sensory input so that you can kind of get over it, because any sensory input, whether it's hearing or visually light, things like that, it just makes it intensify more and more, right? And laying down, what it does is it kind of helps your blood flow just kind of flow throughout all of your body. You rest. If you can rest and do that, then it'll dissipate over time. Now, the time is really a key variable, right? Some people it's a couple hours, and some people it can be days. It doesn't really matter. And especially when you talked about TBIs, oftentimes migraines that come with TBIs, and migraines are a side effect of TBIs. They could last for days, so it's really important.
So this is what you were saying. These are some of the signs of somebody that has had over, like an NFL player,
right,
over a course of time, had injuries that could be small, but intensifies over time. It starts to create more and more and more.
So yeah, exactly right. And like I said at the beginning, a lot of these same symptoms correlate back to PTSD as well. So you really need that medical evaluation to determine where it crosses over.
In fact, Seth, a lot of times the VA will lump TBI in to the mental health PTSD rating, right? And you, like, I know in your case, you had to specifically ask for it to be split out. So let me ask you this question. So after you went through this, you spent what, a month, you said?
Yeah, so it's 30 days inpatient at the hospital.
30 days inpatient at the hospital for TBIs.
It's specifically for TBIs, but they also do a full body workup while you're there.
And
So-
what did they say while you were there? What did they tell you about your TBI?
So the TBI definitely had symptoms of the TBI. Mine being, cumulative effect was not as bad as the guys obviously there with focal point injury. A lot of mine actually went back to PTSD, was the diagnosis by the psychiatrist on staff. However, the motor movement, the migraines, things like that were all related back to the TBIs.
So you must have gotten a great rating for that.
Yeah. So when I first got out, I was lucky that I had doctors and professionals within the battalion, being special operations, that really set me up for success leaving. So while I left the military at 100%, the ratings were not where they probably should have been appropriately rated. So I came out with 70% PTSD, and I came out with only 10% TBI after being admitted to a polytrauma center, right? So
Wow.
10%.
10%. And I think, Chris, you and I have talked about it before. There tends to be a theme coming out of rating guys that have a lot of claims, that did a lot throughout their career, got injured, where they get you to a certain rating, 100% or whatever, then they just kind of check the box going down, 10%, 10%, 10%, get it off my desk.
Yeah.
And on to the next bag.
Yeah. So
But wait, hold on one second. Because Chris brought up a good point. He said that you spent time, it's separated your TBI from your PTSD. Now you got 70% for PTSD.
Right.
And you're 100% overall.
Yep.
Okay. If that PTSD goes up to 100%,
Mhm.
okay, then you have certain SMCs that you get.
Right.
And we've talked about those in other videos and that. But talk for a second about a T. There's what they call a special monthly compensation T. What does that have to be at? What percentage does that have to be at to get a certain special monthly compensation
for
just T, for TBI?
you have to be at least, I think it's 50%.
50%. At 50%, what does
For your TBI.
right? What percentage does he have to be at to get a higher level special monthly compensation, what they call T?
Yeah. So for T, which is specifically for TBI,
Right.
he can get up to $11,000 a month.
Yeah.
Okay. So, but they have to work at it and really understand the system to be able to do that. It's
Exactly.
listen, a lot of guys don't understand that there actually are ratings for these things for TBI. There's actually a rating called R1, all right, which is $11,000 a month as well. That's total compensation. That being said, I want to go back to what Seth talked about when he said, yeah, they gave me a PTSD rating of 70% and TBI of 10%,
Yeah.
right? So since all of that was put into the same category, Seth, you got an overall 100%, but that didn't really even cover the tip of the iceberg with what was going on with you. I know you and I have talked about that. So talk a little bit more about the other things that you had. For instance, when you inquired the VA about loss of use and things like that, what did they say to you?
Yeah. So, a lot of the vets out there think that 100% is it, you're done. Right. And for a good majority of vets, that's probably true. The SMC is exactly what it says. It's special monthly compensation, right? You have to have something unique in your disability to really qualify.
Right.
Now, I'll circle back to, the question about SMCR1 and T. But, the first one that usually a lot of guys should be qualified for and may not get and leave on the table is SMCS. So talking about getting a PTSD to 100%, right? So if your mental health is rated at 100% and you are going to get another rating, your rest of your claims add up to 60%, or what we like to call 100 plus 60, right? That's SMCS, essentially aid in attendance. And that's really your first step moving into special monthly compensation.
So one of your disabilities at 100%.
Right.
Right.
Right. So in my case, after we did the rebuttal working with VAC, I went from 70% PTSD to 100% PTSD rating. And it was just as simple as a rebuttal. I didn't have to do another CMP.
Right.
Essentially, they looked back at my records and were like, "Oh, we got this wrong.
So,
Fix."
so in your case, with your PTSD, I mean, when you and I talked, it's a clear case of being under. You're rating the lowball, so to
Right.
speak, right? And so you were able to do a rebuttal on that and got it up to 100%.
Which then qualified me for SMCS.
Mhm.
Now, currently, we're working on SMCL.5, which is below the R rating, or SMCR1, right?
Right.
And the thing with SMCR1, or when you start going for SMCs, unless you're going to take the time to really become an expert in VA law and how CFR 38 works, you need to reach out to people that know what they're doing, right? And since coming on board at VAC, I've learned a ton to be able to help myself and the other guys as well, that I work with, the other vets. So when you start looking at R1, I'm filing for loss of use, right, in my hands. And that's kind of what Chris was.
Why is that?
So because of my TBIs and the injuries to my C-spine that I have, impinging my spinal cord, I have constant numbness.
So just for clarity's sake, Seth's C-spine is
My neck.
it's his neck is basically just crumbled, in a lot of places.
I think four crushed vertebrae in my C-spine, and then spinal cord impingement. But because of that, I essentially have no feeling in my hands, almost constantly, and it's affecting my grip strength.
No, wait, you told me something. You told Chris and I something. You're already laughing because you know what I'm going to ask you. What did the VA give you on your hands?
So, I think my hands are at like 10% rating right now.
Okay.
What's interesting is chronic government worker syndrome, right? I went in to renew my ID card and the fingerprint machine was broken a while back while I was active duty. So instead of fixing the machine, they put me in Deers as a double amputee with no hands. So when I in-processed the VA, they were like, "Hey bro, you're a double amputee." And I was like, "Yeah, and you still won't give me R1.
And you won't give me loss of use.
It's been an ongoing struggle because I found out that when that guy did that, there is no way to fix that in my records to say that I actually had my hands.
Don't have hands, right?
They have to delete my whole military and Deer profile to start it over from scratch.
So I know that when you go to the VA, they always look at you.
Yeah.
As you pick this out. I got to ask you, you touched on, since you come on board with VAC, but before you came on board with Veterans Advocate Center, how much of a help was it before you got out of the military? Because I know you worked with Rob before you got out of the military, kind of do certain things. Rob was kind of coaching you, I think, and educating you on what to.
Yeah, so I've known Rob and Chris about the same time, right? And Chris, at the time, Rob was not yet doing the VA stuff.
So it was Chris.
But Chris was doing VA claims at the time, still helping vets out. And it really, I don't know if it was more coaching, but more so highlighting, like, you need to get this written down X, Y, and Z, right? You're getting ready to retire, get it written down now.
Right.
Because what that's doing is it's creating the nexus, right? And the nexus is the hardest part, usually.
I'm going to stop you for a second. Go ahead.
A nexus is a link to service, right?
It
says that this happened in the military. Go ahead.
Well, now that I'm back,
Seth, you're back.
So the nexus is your link to service, right? And so there's a lot of guys out there that have symptoms, a lot of veterans out there that live daily with some sort of disability from their service. But because of what we talked about at the beginning of the show, hey, grab your ruck, let's go. We're getting ready to do PMT again, or we're getting ready to deploy again. Or, you worked in a specialty field like I did. You didn't want to be injured, because if you're injured, it could drastically affect your career down the line. It could take you off your team, things like that. So guys never went and saw sick call. They never went and saw battalion med. They never got documentation. So what that causes on the back end for vets out there is whenever you try and do your claim yourself, or you're working with a VSO or a private company, you have to now establish that nexus, right? And the VA, as a general rule, wants to argue with it. Yeah. So what me and Chris were just talking about, the nexus, right?
Right.
You have your nexus, which is your link to service, and you have your DBQ, which is kind of the rating they did, the disability benefits questionnaire, right? And it's how the CFR works.
Sure.
So a lot of guys out there are probably listening to the show at this point, and they're going, all right, I've got nexus and SMCT and R1 and DBQs. And, for me, if I think back 2-3 years ago when I was getting out, yeah, sure, bro, write it down and someone's going to give me a rating, right? Which we just obviously discussed is not always the case when they lowball you.
I know that with some of you vets, this sounds like foreign language.
Exactly.
SMC, special monthly compensation, R1, that's how much? 8,300, 9,300, 11,000. Oh my God, there's a lot of information here. This is what I'd like you to do. If what Seth has been saying so far, some of you are listening to saying, you know what, I have some of those symptoms. I'm going through some of this. Please email us. You can email us. You could talk to us. You could call us. You can hook up with Chris at any time, or Seth, or myself, a number of us, and we will help you through this process. Seth is a prime example by going with Chris a couple of years ago, several years ago, listening to what to do. If you're still in the military and you're watching this show and you're going to be getting out in a year or two, this is really important. Definitely contact us and we'll help you and educate you on what you should do before you get out. Chris is an expert on this. Seth is a great expert on this because he lived it, he did it, and he's an example of it now. So I just want to step in. I know we're going to cut the show right at this point. I know there's a lot more and we'll probably have other segments on this. But Seth, I want to thank you so much. If you had something to say to veterans right now, they're listening to this, you served 20 years. But it doesn't matter if a veteran served a year or 10 years, 20 years. If a veteran's listening right now, what would you say for a veteran who's going, I'm not sure what I should do. I don't have a rating, or I have a rating. I'm not sure what the next step is.
So I think there's two key things I would say. One, circling back to VAC, right? Never be hesitant to reach out, right? Even if it's just information finding, and at least talk to us. The company itself has Army vets, Marines, Navy. We have guys that understand what you went through specific to your service, right? And two, when you're going through this, it doesn't matter, like you said, if you served a year, you were in reserves, you were mobilized, even if it's 90 days, reserve time active, you qualify for benefits. You did sign a contract, you did serve. If you experience injury or trauma in that time, never feel like you don't deserve the benefits. That's why the VA exists. You made a sacrifice and it's owed to you. So definitely use your benefits.
Chris, you and I are partners in Veterans Advocate Center. What do you say to vets that are sitting there going, I don't know if I should do this. I don't know if I even deserve this.
It's simple. What do you got to lose? Just give us a call. Get information, and we're happy to help in any way we can. There's no pressure or anything like that. It's just come with a guy talking and saying, all right, this. We know the law, we know the regulations, and we know, I mean, there are over 900 disabilities that people qualify for. So it doesn't hurt just to reach out, talk to someone. Okay, there you go.
Well, I've got to say, if you've enjoyed this segment of the show and you really enjoy this, hit subscribe, hit like, share this with your friends, share this with your family members or anybody in the military. And again, I'm Stacey Michelon, your host of You Served, You Deserve. Please contact us.